All right, I guess we might as well go ahead and get started. We're probably going to see a couple more people popping in here. But today here I am in my Victorian drawing room because we have Act 3 of The Importance of Being Earnest, which is the final act of the play. And if you read it ahead of time, you know that there are some surprises that happen in this act, but it all takes place in a Victorian parlor or morning room, sitting room, that kind of thing. Nowadays we would call it a living room, but I think most people's living rooms nowadays are about entertainment, right? Like the television and so on. Victorian sitting rooms or parlors are set up for conversation so that people come over and you can sit there and you can have your tea and you can discuss, you know, whatever gossip or topics of the day that you want to present. So they're set up in usually little sections of the room where people can sit and have private conversations. And you'll see that in the video today for Earnest. Let me go to the calendar real quick because I have an announcement about tomorrow. If you look at the calendar, well, I was looking at the calendar. Today I want to talk a little bit about essay number 2 and a little bit about the final exam, and then we'll watch the ending part of The Importance of Being Earnest. The ending part is not very long. Act 3, let me see, I wrote down the times. Act 3 is, I just wrote to the end. I didn't write down how many minutes, but I don't think it's as long as Act 2. So what I was thinking was, maybe today I would talk about essay number 2. We already talked about it one time back on the 9th, but by now you should have started narrowing down your topic, thinking about what you want to write about, etc. So I'll go back into essay number 2 and talk about it a little bit. And I'll talk about the final exam also. I'm anticipating that we will have a study guide early next week so that you can start, checking that out. I think by the time we have class on Tuesday, there'll be a study guide for the final. But anyway, the point is, if I can talk about essay number 2 and the final exam briefly today, we can watch Act 3, then we're sort of caught up, and I don't think we'll need to have a Zoom class tomorrow, even though tomorrow is a B day. I hope you notice that what I'm trying to do is conserve class time when we don't really need it, because you could be using that time for your discussions, your paper, your reading, sleeping, eating, whatever else you've got going on. So whenever it's possible, I'm trying to, condense classes so that we can not have to have a virtual meeting, a synchronous class tomorrow. So there will not be a synchronous Zoom class tomorrow, but I do want everybody to check in on formative so that I can do the attendance. And also the question on formative is going to ask you a few things about how your paper is shaping up. That way, if you have a question, you can directly ask me. If you have, a concern about your topic, if you aren't sure about your thesis, whatever, then we can interact then, and I can maybe help you in this process. The paper's due in a week and a half. So I don't want it to go by without ample opportunity for you to get help on it. Of course, I'm always available by email, and a few people have already emailed me like their first paragraph or an outline, that kind of thing. One person emailed me about helping them with sources. So I think that it's a good compromise tomorrow to not have synchronous class. You can sleep in, maybe a little bit, and I probably will, and taking tomorrow off too. And then you can just respond in the formative, how it's coming with your paper, where you are with things, etc. And I'll email people back if I feel like, I need to help or converse with them about the paper. And then our next class period, live class period, will be on the 27th. Hopefully that's okay with everybody. I know that sometimes it's not the earliest notice about changing the class situation, but I'm hoping that not having class is making up for that. I do try to tell you the day before so that you don't wake up at 8 in the morning and go, oh, there's no class. So I'm trying to avoid that. I remember that was a real downer when I would get up early, get to my classes, and there'd be a note on the door that the professor isn't there today. So anyway, that's my big announcement for today. Also, discussion number 8 is due tomorrow, the post. I went over that on Tuesday, so if you have any questions about it, do let me know. Before we get into the play today, let's just talk a little bit about the final exam and essay number 2, just so I can feel like, you know, we talked about it and made sure that we were all on the same page. I know some people will wait to do it until they absolutely have to do it. There are people who are procrastinators, and I'm not going to say that I'm not one. But I do think that you probably have a lot going on, and this little tiny push toward what are you doing for your paper will start to get you thinking at least about your topic, and get you started, because the final is due very sooner than you might think. It's a week from Tuesday that those are due. So let me open essay number 2. And just go over the options again. Remember that you have 3 options for this paper. You need to have at least 5 sources. 3 of them need to be from JSTOR. So if you're having trouble accessing JSTOR, there is a tutorial down here, how to access it. The link is here. You use your I can't believe I said that. Your STC. That's my best goof of the year. Your STC credentials, and hopefully y'all don't have any STD credentials. And then there's also a couple of videos about searching there. Now, if you've used JSTOR before, then you don't have to worry about it. But what if you're using JSTOR and you're having trouble finding articles on your topic? Then you might want to look at one of those tutorials or contact me, and I'll send you some DOIs or links to articles or titles and authors that you can check out depending on your topic. But you do need to have 5 sources minimum. 3 of them need to be from JSTOR, so like official literary criticism type articles. Now remember that there are 3 options for this paper. One is that you can analyze the work of a literary movement or a period. So go back over the 6 units and say, oh, I was really interested in medieval literature, and I just want to talk about that particular period and how that period helped to build the legacy of modern English literature. So what elements of medieval literature do we see in literature today? So you go and you research what have people had to say about that, and you report on that in your paper. Your second option is to analyze the work of one author. Maybe you were just really, really interested in the work of Percy Shelley or Robert Browning, you know, and you really want to delve into more of that person's work, because in this class we can really only read like minimal work by each author. So you can talk about research. What is it that that person contributed to literature, English literature in general, and how did they make their mark on the literature that we read today? And then the third option is analyzing a literary text. So you can go back to something that we studied. It can be a poem, it can be a play, it can be, you know, a piece of fiction, whatever you find, you know, epic poem, and go back and really delve into the way that that work can be examined through 2 different critical lenses. So with that one, it's about how can I go back and look at Beowulf through a psychoanalysis standpoint. So the writers of Beowulf never knew about psychoanalysis, of course, but here we are in 2021. So we can go back and psychoanalyze Beowulf if we want. And probably some researchers already have. So there are lenses that you can choose from. And then the rest of this document, remember, is about defining those lenses. So this is, you would only look at the rest of this document if you were doing option C, you know, the third option, option 3. Because that's the only one that's using the lenses. The other ones are going to be using, you know, the time period or the specific author. All right, so by now I would think that if you were planning ahead, you would already know whether you were doing option 1, 2, or 3. I'm going to ask you that in the formative tomorrow. And if so, what's the focus of the paper, kind of thing. So I'm going to kind of force you tomorrow to at least figure that out so that you're on your way to your paper if you're not already. Questions that I haven't answered about the paper, little details. We're using MLA. All of you know how to do that, so I'm not too concerned about your formatting or anything like that. I'm going to tell you that if you're more of a procrastinator, I acknowledge that that's a thing. And you have issues getting into JSTOR or searching it the night before the paper's due, there's little I can do to help you at that point. It's going to be a deduction on the paper if you don't have those 3 sources from JSTOR, because it's a specific requirement for this paper that you know how to use that database. So if you start looking for articles on JSTOR in the next week or so, and you run into trouble, like I can't log in, I can't find any articles on my topic, what have you, then I still have time to respond and help you. But if you're more of a midnight oil, let me write this paper in the next 3 hours type person, the night before it's due or the day that it's due, you know, that's your choice. I'm not going to say that's a bad thing, but it could be if you need help, because I'm limited on what I can do to help you in that situation. So I would like to end the semester on a good note with everybody getting good grades on their research papers and on the final. So that's why I talk about it a lot leading up into it. But I don't see any questions in the chat. Tomorrow, the formative will ask you to, you know, kind of give me some general idea of what you're writing about in your paper. The other thing that I want to talk about before we look at Act 3 is the final exam. I will have a study guide for you. I'll probably finish it this weekend and post it, and I'll probably present it to you on Tuesday, the 27th. We're going to start on modernism in the 20th century. The exam is the week of the 10th. So it's just like the midterm. I think I'm going to reduce the number of questions. I noticed it tells me the length of time that people are working on the test, and I did leave it open, but I was surprised to see that some people were taking like 10 hours. And I'm hoping that what happened is they started it and then they went to sleep or something, because it shouldn't take you that long to do the test. If you're looking every single thing up as it shows up on the test, that's not the purpose of the exam. The purpose of the exam is for you to have these things mostly in your mind. You might have to check your notes about something, but you should be able to answer the questions on the midterm and the final from your studies. So, you know, one person told me it took me 12 hours to do that midterm, and I'm like, well, then did you just stop and research everything when you were doing the test? Because that's not learning. That's not the point of the course. The point of the course is to learn throughout, and then in the final demonstrate that you have learned, not to do all the learning on the exam. That's not how exams work. So I'm going to reduce the number of questions slightly. I'm almost done with refining the exam that they already have set up there. And so I'm going to reduce the number of questions, but you know, kind of think about, are you just trying to learn everything when you're taking the exam, and how weird that is, because that's weird, and not super productive and not the intent of the test. So it will have short answers, it will have essays, and so there will be short responses of 5 sentences, and then longer responses of at least 10 sentences. But I think I'll probably reduce the number of those that you have. It will be randomized, just like the midterm. They have a number of terms and concepts in the database that it just spits them out randomly for each test taker. So I will make a study guide that has a list of all the things that are possible on the exam. And then that way, just like I did with the midterm, And then that way, if you spend, it'd be 2 weeks. If I give you the exam review on Tuesday, then that will be 2 weeks before the exam. So if you spend some time studying over that list, and maybe there'll be a couple of opportunities in class, maybe like the Friday the 7th, where I can say, is there anything on the study guide that you want me to talk about? That kind of thing. Then you should be prepared for the test. But I don't know. I kind of feel like if you look at the study guide and none of that stuff is familiar, and then you just wait until the test to find out about all of it, then you kind of get what you reap what you sow at that point, because that's not the way it's supposed to go. That's the reason I'm showing up here every day, is to help you through the literature that you're supposed to be reading and understanding. So that's the point. I just can't tell when we're on the thing here, but I think most people do. Questions about the essay or the final exam before we move into Earnest? Oh, I know. I had another quick reminder. Reminder that the faculty evaluations, the student evaluations of instructors is open. I think only one person from this class has submitted. It won't tell me who, but it will tell me the percentage of students and the number of students in each class that have already submitted. You can just go over here to evaluation right here. Actually, I think that's from my view. Let me go into the student view and we'll see what it looks like for you guys. Yeah, so go over here to where it says course evaluation, and right there you should be able to do your evaluations for your different STC courses. Even if you don't put any comments, you could at least do the ratings and stuff, because it helps us. It helps us when we're planning, and it helps us, the department chairs and people to know who do they need to look into, who's a problem, that kind of thing. Hopefully I'm not a problem. I guess I'll find out. All right, I'm gonna go to this screen. This is the same screen that I had up on Tuesday when we were looking at Act 2 of The Importance of Being Earnest. It's just a reminder of the characters. I mean, I guess we could add in on here. I can't edit it right now, but right here we could add Dr. Chasuble, because he is present here in the second half of the play. But we have our characters. Now in Act 2 and Act 3, we're in the country. So, one of the concepts to track is city versus country. Act 1 takes place in the city, and then all of the action moves to the country in Acts 2 and 3. So this final act takes place in the drawing room. Here I am in a similar setting. Out at Jack Worthing's estate. And Jack and Algernon have just gotten into a little bit of trouble with Cecily and Gwendolyn, because they have identified that they are not named Ernest. And this is a problem for Gwendolyn and Cecily, because they both like the name Earnest because it means honest and straightforward, which these two are not being by saying their name is Ernest. There's obviously some irony there and hypocrisy. And so they've just been caught, and at the beginning of Act 3, the ladies have gone into the manor, and the two men are kind of like outside, and they're talking about, like, what are we going to do? Because Algernon is in love with Cecily. That happened just like that. Actually, they've already been engaged for a while, because Cecily got engaged to Earnest before she even met him. And that's obviously a satire of the way that upper class people choose their mates on a whim. Oscar Wilde's giving us a little commentary on that. But also we have, the concept of identity is going to come up pretty strongly in Act 3. There's a surprise about the identity of Jack and Algernon too. And so what we thought was the deception about them, being Earnest, which is a made up person, is actually going to transition into a reality check that's going to happen with them. So I just wanted to remind you, this image is also on Blackboard, so you can find it in the additional materials if this helps you remember about the play. So I'm going to move into the play here. Opening on Act 3, we have Cecily, who is here, and she's looking out at the fact that Algernon and Jack are coming in, or John. Jack is a nickname for John, so sometimes you'll hear them say that it's John. And then here is Gwendolyn, and the two men are going to come in, and the ending of the play will be unraveled. So I'm going to go ahead and play that so that we can watch the final acts together. And then when we're finished, I'll wrap up for today. Any questions before we start? I should have brought a little teacup or something. Okay, let me get this set up.
We are eating muffins.
Oh dear, I wish to goodness you wouldn't go. But I've just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 6 o'clock under the name of Earnest. Oh, my dear fellow, I made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble myself to be christened at 5:30, and I naturally will take the name of Ernest. I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There's no evidence at all